Okay, you're all set. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Amherst Charter Review Committee meeting. We are starting at 6:30 today due to a slight communication error. But I will be getting us started and going around with saying if you can hear us and be heard. I'll go by who's on my screen. Bernie?
I'm here.
Marcus?
Yeah.
Andy?
Here.
Meg?
I'm here, and I'll just say I have something going on that I may need to step
Okay.
away. I'll just step away, but I will be on mute.
Ken?
Here.
Raphael?
Here.
And Erica.
I am here. I'll be on camera in a little bit. I am here.
No worries. So first things first, I'll just say for our announcements, Raphael, it's your turn to take minutes. Is that all right by you?
It is.
Great. And then Marcus, you're up next for our next meeting, and then the schedule will restart.
And that's me.
So the schedule then restarts with Meg. Yep. So just a little bit of a reminder there. And then trying to think, is there other reminders, announcements? I believe everybody's heard, but Dan has resigned from the committee for a number of reasons that he shared with me on the phone a few days ago. So he made that decision, and we will be working to find him a replacement. And I'll describe that process a little more and take questions for that at agenda item 8. So we'll go to approve the minutes of January 16th. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of January 16th. Second?
Second.
Great. Motion made. Marcus seconds. Meg?
Yes,
Uh,
I have a
Erica?
question later, but
I'm going to abstain because I have not seen the minutes.
You guys have questions about the minutes, ask them now before we vote.
no, mine was about something else that you said before the minutes
Great.
came up.
Meg?
Where are the minutes? I don't see them in the meeting packet.
Yeah, I haven't seen them. I got the minutes themselves, but I didn't. Athena, do you have the minutes? Or did Dan take the minutes?
I don't have minutes.
Oh, well then let's not approve them.
Oh, we can't. What are we doing?
How embarrassing that I approved them.
Wow. Yeah, that is embarrassing for me to make that motion too. Wow. Because Dan was going to write them up, but Dan resigned, so we don't have the minutes. And Athena will write up the minutes and bring them to a future meeting, I believe. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Athena. Great. Public comment for anyone participating in the public. You can raise your hand on Zoom or press *9 on a telephone, and I will bring you into the room and let you speak for 3 minutes. So if anyone from the public would like to speak, now is your chance. Raise your hand or *9. You see anyone, Athena?
Nope.
Okay, great. So now we will, Meg, what is your question about?
I'm just curious. You said that Dan gave you his reasons. Would it be helpful or appropriate to know what they were? Would it be something that would be informative for us?
We can discuss that. I put on agenda item number 8, committee vacancy. So we can discuss that and sort of get into it then. Obviously, I'll paraphrase as best I can, but I don't want to speak for him. Andy?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the meeting packet. I don't see the agenda in it.
I can show you the list of topics here.
Yeah, I didn't find it either. I also couldn't find it.
It's here on the calendar.
Huh. Just going to take a picture of it.
Here we go. So my next thing, in my absence, I did watch the recording, and it seemed like people had more questions about the scope of work, so I figured to bring that back. with the scope of work for the Collins Center that we looked at last time. Would you mind screen sharing that again, Athena? If not, that's okay too. And I'll sort of combine this with Andy's update from the Collins Center and combine it into one. Maybe I can edit it on the screen.
I have a PDF, so I can't edit this.
Okay,
Do you have it in an editable format?
I do. I'll screen share that. That
Okay.
would probably be easier for the committee.
Is the memo dated January 2nd?
Yep.
Okay, so I have it here.
I'm just going to get it in an editable format so that we can make edits based on what Andy learned from the Collins Center and then vote to approve.
Yeah.
There we go.
I don't know if we'll get to that point based on the conversation. I can give you what I heard, and
There we go. Yeah. If you wanna describe what you heard and then we'll review this, that sounds appropriate.
yeah. Actually I had, let's see. I have an email that I sent to him, to the people that I talked about, that I summarized. If you want me to share my screen, people can see it, or I can just read it.
If you want to just read it out, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So I met with via Zoom with Anthony Wilson, who directs the Collins Center's charter team, and with Mike Ward, who directs the center and who previously staffed our charter commission work. And they both, I think Anthony had seen Athena at the MMA conference, and Mike had seen Paul Bockelman, so they were somewhat familiar with the fact that we have a charter committee and the charter review committee and so on. Anthony Wilson, the director of the charter team there, is available to attend our next meeting via Zoom and do a free presentation on how other charter review committees have done their work and the resources the Collins Center can offer. We can discuss our needs with him at that time, and he can come back with a detailed scope and budget after that. He said it would be likely maybe up to $20,000, although a number have been more in the $12,000 to $15,000 range, depending on the level of support. We discussed starting with an initial smaller consulting contract to support our current work, framing, strategies, resources, which could then be amended if and when we need more support, such as meeting facilitation or winnowing of input down the line. He said he could send a scope and a budget for that initial piece in a week or so. So maybe next week sometime.
Okay, great.
The Collins Center is in demand for charter work, so their staff would not be likely available until March.
Okay.
That gives us time to get the funding approved, and maybe we could get some access to resources, models. They have a data bank of survey questions, which I think would be particularly valuable since they're tested questions and they wouldn't be leading the interviewees or the survey folks.
Okay.
So maybe we could get some of that before March once we have certainty that we will be able to do a contract.
Yeah, I think having those would be helpful before that. Did you say that they would provide us a scope of work, or that we need to provide that to them?
He said he could send a scope of work and a budget for that initial piece.
Okay.
Next week.
Sure. And then would we as a committee, I guess, would approve that and send it off to Paul? He said he could send it next week.
That was my understanding, but he's also
Okay.
he's also available, and he's put it in his calendar that he can come to our meeting via Zoom on the 13th.
Yeah.
We could talk more about it then, or we can see what we get next week and see if that's something that we want to just submit to Paul, just get things.
Okay. I'll definitely put it on the agenda to have it at our next meeting. I guess we'd want to take a committee vote to have him provide us with a scope of work and a budget that we would then forward to Paul. So, Bernie?
Yeah, I would hope that we could have Anthony at the next meeting, and dialogue with him around what the Collins Center has done and what they soon other communities do. And if he can get us a draft scope of work for, prior to that, all the more, that's better because then we'll have some notion about what he's going to talk about.
Right.
And,
So-
I think that's preferable than to try to go through this letter right now and edit it. I think we should agree that he'll present to us and he'll give us a draft.
Yeah, I agree. I think that seems reasonable. After all, it is what we're paying them for. So that seems to make a lot of sense to me. I guess I'll just try to keep it more formal, and say that I'll move that we request the Collins Center through Andy. Like you can ask them, Andy, request that the Collins Center develop a scope of work and a budget for us, and that the budget they develop be sent to Paul Bockelman.
So,
Yeah.
It should come to us before it goes to Paul.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree. Yeah.
yeah, I think what he said was that, he can talk to us about our needs at the next meeting, and he can give us a full scope after we have that conversation.
Okay.
But if we wanted an initial scope for just like what
Sure.
kind of get you started help can they give us on a consulting sort of email,
Yeah.
phone call basis, then before they even have staff available, then he could let us know what that would be probably next week.
Okay. I would
Okay.
ask if he could do that. That would be great. So that sounds good.
Great.
Okay. Excellent. So that takes care of.
Well, if you made a motion, so we've got to second it and all that sort of good stuff, right?
I'll
Yeah.
just, I guess I'll reword my motion to say, I move that we request a scope of work and budget from the Collins Center that will come to our next meeting to be approved by the committee and sent to the town manager.
I'll second that.
Great. Myself, I'm an aye. Marcus,
Aye.
Erica,
Aye.
Meg,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Bernie,
Aye.
Raphael.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Great. So that excuse me. So that approves the scope of work. That pretty much takes care of the budget update, with exception of just rough printing cost for if we want to send a townwide mailer would be around $5,000, and I believe that Paul's been made aware of that. I think I emailed him about that. That takes care of agenda point 6, an update from Andy. So our next point, making good time here,
Yeah. Great.
is agenda point 7, assign and schedule meetings with elected officials. I know Bernie had some documents about that he was going to share, so I'm happy to take a look at those. But you had your hand up, actually, Bernie.
Right. Before we move on, I just want to
Yeah.
caution that if we're going to request money for mailings or meetings or public gatherings, anything like that, that we have to be, it has to be lead pipe certain that we're going to spend that money before the end of the fiscal year.
June 30th.
If we get a contract with the Collins Center and it's not finished by June 30th, that can be considered a continuing appropriation, and the money will just roll into the next fiscal year. For stuff like, if we want to budget for mailer, we're going to have to make sure the mailer goes out and that money gets used. Otherwise, we're going to have it reappropriated the next fiscal year. Just one of those housekeeping things that can be trouble.
So that's June 30th. Can we punt it to push it into the next year, vote for an extension, or is that not?
No, if we
Athena's
have-
got a hand up. I'll let her.
Athena, go ahead.
So we heard from Melissa Zawatsky, the finance director, at the last meeting, and she clarified that if the committee or the town enters a contract with the Collins Center, but they're not paid in this fiscal year, that's fine because we have a contract signed. But other uses for that money, they need to be spent in the fiscal year when they're appropriated. So an appropriation request that goes through the council right now is an FY25 appropriation request. If the committee thinks that they're going to spend money in FY26, then you should make that request as part of the FY26 budget. Because anything like Bernie said, if you're sending a mailer that's going out after June 30th, that money needs to be appropriated in the FY26 budget or as a supplemental appropriation in FY26.
Is there a way for us to enter into a contract with a mailing company now? And just the same as Collins Center, where we would pay them when we need to?
You would need to know what you're going to
I
mail.
have no idea.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out ways of getting around the issue. But,
Yeah, so having a plan ahead of time is going to be important
Yeah.
at this stage. So knowing if you're going to send a postcard with a QR code, or if you're going to mail out a survey, or if you're going to mail out at the end of your process a summary of what the committee's recommendations are and a final opportunity to give feedback on those recommendations, what you send out will determine when you need to send it out, and then when your appropriation needs to be made so that you can send it at the time that you want to send it. So I think the outreach committee should maybe take that up.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd recommend the outreach committee to decide or make a recommendation on, do we want to send out a mailer soon? Do we want to send out a mailer once we recommend things? At what points do we see a mailer as appropriate? Andy?
I just was looking at the charge, and it says that we're going to complete our work by the end of April, and unless we ask for an extension.
Which year? Which year is that? April of what?
Of this year, and my sense is that we're not going to finish by then.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's sort of laughable.
Putting in that request at some point, but this may be where it makes sense to put put an initial request for the initial scope to get us started work with the Collins Center, and then once they help us frame along with the outreach subcommittee what the more extensive work would be, then we ask for the rest to do that work. And some of it might be in July, or some of it might be in May and June, or April. So
Meg?
I want to suggest that you ask the outreach subcommittee on which I sit. This is a little bit asking for more work, but instead of only asking for a recommendation on when to send out the mailer, that the subcommittee might create a draft calendar of outreach.
Yeah.
It would include other things beside a mailer. There's a whole bunch of stuff, there's several things we're discussing that it seems to me a calendar would be a structure that, we can change it, but that we could bring to you all. Outreach calendar. I hope Erica and Raphael don't mind that.
Nope.
I think Athena has her hand up.
Athena?
If I may offer a suggestion that you coordinate your outreach efforts with the timing of the reports that you'll need to present to the council. So it might be wise to have an idea of what outreach you're going to plan in this first phase before your first report, and then the second phase before your second report, and then a final phase before your final report and recommendation.
Exactly. Good.
Could be a good idea to coordinate that with the full committee.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, the charge does have those distinct reports in there in sequence. You have to honor what's in the charge. And
yep. Thank you.
In terms of interviewing with the current and former elected officials, I added, it was requested, I added some questions so to make things a little bit more directive. And as I'm looking at this and knowing that the Collins Center will be showing up at the next meeting, again, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we may want to defer this until we can get some input from them. So we're not we're not, we're not ending up replicating the effort later. But if you look in the document center, you'll see the interview format revised document, and that has 4 questions in it that
I agree. I think it would be better to have the Collins Center take a look at some of these issues and sort of propose some outreach questions that might be sort of I mean, these questions don't look bad, but having the Collins Center go and actually look at this and propose topic and discussion questions for our interviews would probably give it more of a professional lens and also sort of take out possible bias issues and that sort of thing.
yeah, I don't know that there's any bias issues in those questions. Those are pretty standard,
Yeah,
the kind of approaches, which I tried to do. I didn't want to push people in one direction or another. So they're pretty general, but I have no problem at all. I have a great deal of respect for the work the Collins Center does and their staff, and I have no problem at all having this go off to the Collins Center after we talk with Anthony and see what he may be suggesting. I have a lengthy list of questions that could be asked. And what I was trying to do is narrow it down to a handful of broader questions that would give people the opportunity to kind of free associate around these questions. So, like I said, I have those folks are pros. I have no problem letting them take a shot at this.
great. Ken?
I think that's a great idea. And I just wanted to ask Bernie, do you have the former counselors in mind with these questions as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
What the list of in the last meeting, there was a list of current and former counselors and current school committee and library trustees. So you've got in this, you've got 5 sort of general questions for the current and former counselors, for the library trustees, and the Amherst School Committee, the regional school committee, the Amherst School Committee. Just a shorter range of questions because those committees are not well defined in the charter. They pretty much are referred to and they operate as the statutes allow them. So, folks should feel free to look at these. If you've got any feedback, you want to send me an opinion on it, please do. Just don't send it to everybody, just to me. I will be happy at some point to compile it all and hand it back. But, again, I know that the Collins Center will want to interview current and former elected officials. I know that they want to interview department heads. They'll have a whole range of people that should be either interviewed or questioned. We send a questionnaire or something like that. And if we're going to use them, and I would hope we do, I really don't want to begin by duplicating that effort.
I agree. I think having the Collins Center review them would be an excellent idea. I think they're good questions. They're generally objective and sort of run-of-the-mill questions that you developed, but having that sort of professional touch from them would be great. Andy and then Erica?
Yeah, this just reminded me of in the conversation that I had with Mike and Anthony. We were talking about the difficulty of getting people up to speed on what's in the charter so that they can answer questions about how it should be changed. And they basically said, don't ask people how the charter should be changed. Ask people, what's working and what's not working.
Yeah.
And then we collect what's working and not working, and then we can sort of start to see what might be some answers to help fix what's not working. And then we bring that back and talk to them about that. So it just reminded me of that. And And I think some of these questions do that, but we had talked, I think, at times about pain points. What are the pain points, you know? And so that may be the kind of thing that they say, if you're doing these initial things, these elected officials are more technically savvy than, you know, at least they know probably more how the government operates, hopefully, than the average citizen. So they could probably say what's, you know, what could be clarified. But in general, they're like, they've found it useful to just ask people what's, you know, what's causing pain or what's not working and what is working. So
Yeah, Erica?
I don't know if it's on the, I couldn't really tell where on the agenda it falls, but in the last meeting 2 weeks ago, there was a conversation that the subcommittee should address not necessarily the specific questions, but the protocol for conducting the interviews, like how should we go about it? What sort of what standards should we have? What should be standardized and what should be, and what technologies or platforms should we use? And so the outreach subcommittee spent some time talking about that. So I wanted to offer that up. It doesn't have to be now, but I don't see a place for it on the agenda. So since we're talking about interviews, I just thought I would interject.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Meg?
so yes, two things that we talked about as a subcommittee regarding this issue. And Meg and Raphael, you know, correct me if I'm misstating, but one thing that we talked about was the we had a discussion and decided that the best approach would be to really standardize as much as possible. It sounds like input from the Collins Center is leading us in that direction. In other words, to standardize having the same set of questions asked of everybody that we conduct interviews with, so that all members are sort of armed with the same set of 10 or 12, whatever questions, and conduct the interview based on those questions so that the results are standardized as well. That was one conclusion that we came to that would be a best practice. The other one that we came to was the idea of transcribing. In our last meeting here 2 weeks ago, we talked about should we offer the opportunity for written answers, like where you can just send people a set of questions and have them submit written answers. We talked about the pros and cons of doing in-person interviews. What we discussed as a subcommittee was the great advantage of having interviews recorded and transcribed so that the actual answers are collected and can be offered to interviewees to check for accuracy and then included in whatever final report. I think Raphael referenced a particular charter review report that I can't remember what town, I'm sorry, Raphael, that included a sort of appendix of transcribed interviews, interview subjects of elected officials and so on from whatever town it was. And we discussed it as a group, saw the value of that, and thought that would be another useful sort of protocol to establish, that interviews would be recorded and transcribed. We can talk about technological platforms and methods to do that. So we're not talking about transcribing by hand. But those are two things that I just wanted to throw in the conversation about conducting interviews and making sure that we're getting solid and standard sort of results everywhere we go.
Yeah, I mean, there's very simple transcription technology that you can bring your computer, even your phone, to a meeting and have it listen in and transcribe a relatively accurate situation of it. With like AI and that's not difficult to do. Meg?
Thanks, Erica, for that accurate report on our discussion. I strongly support what Andy said, and people don't know what's in the charter. And I was on the Charter Commission, and I have to look at it sometimes. You know, really, did we say that? I don't think it's helpful, not only to ask them what's working or not working, but encourage them to speak about their own experience.
Yeah. Bernie?
What happened? You know, what makes you think that, or what, you know, what have you, so that it's not just what's working, what's not. It's not just what they heard, but maybe hopefully it's what they experienced or didn't experience. Take down my
Bernie?
hand.
Yeah, I think if you, I'm in general agreement with this. I think if you look at the questions that I framed that were intended to be asked of elected officials, the first four of them are are general and actually use the term feelings a couple of times. So they're not leading anyone, and it's not, what's wrong with this? It's like, what works for you? What's been your experience? The last question is what about specific changes that people would make? And again, this was intended for folks who had at least 2 years of working with the charter. So I don't have a problem with saying that we should record these interviews, just keeping in mind that there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
And that's time consuming, but if, I'm certainly willing to log the time to do that. And I agree that you shouldn't go out in the world and say, what's wrong with the charter? Because I still get, a charter. What are you talking about the charter? What do you do? Why don't you like charter schools? I mean, I still get that.
right.
So the idea would be to get folks sensitized and aware of the form of government we have. Give them the opportunity to opine on that or react to that when you're talking about the general public. The questions that I have here are framed for people who have lived with the charter for some extent of time and operate under it. So, again, I don't have it. I don't disagree with any of the recommendations. I think they're fine. People are willing to invest that time, effort into recording these. That's great. This was not intended. This was intended to get things started because I felt we had stalled
Yeah.
out.
Great.
Which is why I said I can't believe I'm suggesting we hold off until we hear from the Collins Center our next meeting.
So would someone like to make a motion to wrap that up, if you will?
Sorry, just before that, a quick question. I'm assuming we're making recording voluntary, right? Because I don't know if we're going to be ending up talking to anybody in the union on the town side that might have a problem with being recorded. Sorry, just dealing with federal unions and people not wanting to be recorded.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a two-party consent state, so we wouldn't.
Yeah,
wouldn't
okay, good.
want-
I just don't
obviously
want people to think that
ask
we're not going to
for-
talk to them because whatever.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
No,
Good.
obviously, I think it's appropriate to say we would ask, are you okay with this being recorded? If not, are you okay with this being transcribed? If not, still proceed with the interview, take notes.
You're right. Okay,
Just leave it at that. And if they wanted to be more private, that I feel like that's perfectly acceptable, especially given sort of the sensitivities around public sector work and unions and so on and so forth. So does someone want to make a motion to wrap up our agreement on this?
What kind of motion are you looking for?
Yeah. Looking for something that would sort of basically say like, hey, we're
What do
I'll
we
make
get?
a motion that, hey, why don't you make it,
yeah,
why don't you make it, Julian? Make the
I'm-
motion.
I'll make the motion. Okay, sure. I just don't want to be the only one making motions. But I'll make the motion that we hold off, that we wait on meeting with elected officials until the Collins Center has a chance to review Bernie's questions.
Just in general, until we get some advice from
Yeah.
the Collins Center on conducting interviews, because the last thing we want is to have them focus on. I mean, they're not gonna have a problem with these questions. I know that.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Could I
Very well.
amend your motion? Make an
Yeah.
amendment to your motion that
Thank
it be
I couldn't
that we
figure out
hold
what
off.
to say.
I
That's
know,
why
it was
asked who else
awesome what
did.
you did. You saved us, Julian, that we hold off on scheduling the interviews until we have advice from the Collins Center.
Yes, thank you. That sounds better. I'll second Meg's motion because why ask somebody else to make it? When I can't think, I ask someone else to do the thinking. for me.
Sorry.
No, that's perfectly okay.
Second. Oh, you seconded it.
Great, I seconded it already. So I'll start with myself. I'm an aye. Bernie,
Aye.
Marcus,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Erica,
Hi.
and Raphael.
Aye.
Okay,
I
approved
guess
unanimously.
it's obvious I'm an aye because I made the motion. Yeah.
Oh, yep, sorry, Meg. Yep.
Aye, no, no.
Approved.
No, I'm an
approved
aye.
Unanimously. So we'll move on to committee vacancy. So Dan has resigned. He does not have to take the minutes, so Athena will do that for him. So thank you, Athena, for doing that. And the town council has the governance, organization, and legislation committee, which I believe is getting staffed at their next meeting. They didn't do it this time, but at their next meeting, they're going to staff that and elect a chair. And then one of that group's first priorities will be getting us a new member. Athena, I'm unclear if they will be working on getting us a new member from the original pool this committee was working with, and selecting like one of the 3 people who didn't get approved, or if they will be soliciting applications fresh. Do you have any idea about that, or will that be their choice?
Yes, I think I sent maybe I didn't send the policy on making recommendations for appointments to multiple member bodies to you, but the council has a policy for how this whole process works. They do consider community activity forms that have been submitted in the last 2 years, so they'll reach out to the applicants from the first pool, but they do need to post the vacancy notice and open it up to new applicants for, I think, 14 days before they can consider holding interviews and making a recommendation.
And both. So wonderful. Great. Does anyone have any questions about that process? Erica and then Meg.
Yeah, I had a question about the requirement that the committee have 9 members, and is
Right.
that is there, I don't know of any, is there a contingency plan other than being replaced? Can the committee continue to operate with 8 members?
May I answer that?
Yeah, Athena, go right ahead.
Yes, the committee can continue to operate as long as you have a quorum. You can continue. So it's not uncommon for a committee to continue meeting with less than a quorum. So you can
So
no concern with 8 members. The Governance, Organization, and Legislation Committee did suggest to the council a smaller number of members for this committee, and the council said, no, we want 9. So I don't think that's a suggestion that will go very far at this point.
the suggestion to have fewer members?
To reduce the number of members. And 8 wouldn't be an appropriate number anyhow, because it's an even number. So the number of committee members is still 9, the quorum is still 5, and you can continue your work as long as you have 5, you can continue your work.
So we can continue meeting as long as we have a quorum of 5 members, and that process will sort of go through alongside us, if you will. Meg?
I had the same question Erica had.
Great. Awesome. And then just a little bit of a recap. I think Dan's most frustration was at last meeting, which I wasn't at, so I don't want to speak too much for him, but I would encourage you to reach out to him to ask why he resigned. His email, his phone is open. I believe everybody has his email, so if you're curious, please email him. He said that he would respond, and that the last meeting was especially frustrating for him, is what he seemed to express to me. But that his line's always open, and he would explain if folks emailed him. So any questions about that or his rationale or anything like that? No? Okay. So I will move on to community organization and town staff outreach plan. Bernie, you had a document on this that listed some organizations and community groups, as well as some town leadership staff that
Well,
we could look at.
The document that I had, and it's again would have been in the packet for the 16th, was department heads.
Okay.
And again, if we're gonna, here I go, stepping on my own toes again. If we're gonna bring the Collins Center in and they're gonna look at what we're asking the counselors and the school committee members like, we should let them make suggestions around how we contact and get opinions from department heads and other staff.
Okay, great. I'll be
The other challenge is that we need to think about, and again, we can take it up with them, is, we have a huge number of committees, but most of those committees are appointed by the town manager. So that may be a question of how much does the council really want to get into the committee appointment business, or approval method, but that, we can dive into the charter and see what it says in detail and take that up as well in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, a few thoughts I had on that was just first off that yes, I think we do want to speak with town department heads. I don't think it's just town department heads. There's town boards, town committees, and like regular town staff. I think that just having us meet with department heads, I'd like us to meet with, whether it be, obviously we can't meet with everyone, but committee chairs, union representatives from different departments, etc., to sort of get the opinions and thoughts of sort of a broader group of people than just the department heads. So I think having the Collins Center look at that will be important. Andy?
Yeah, I think when we get to questions of scale, then it's like, what are the strategies for reaching out to all these people? How many interviews can we do, and do we end up identifying all those people, not just department heads, but other types of staff and so on? And then, at some level, we'll probably end up sending out a questionnaire or something, and they can respond to it or something, because I just don't know that we'll be able to interview everybody that we would make it put on a list.
I would almost suggest having an anonymous questionnaire for all town staff and all board and committee members that folks can fill out. And then in addition to that, interviewing some of the major department heads along with some of the major board and committee chairs and some of the union representatives or union presidents of the different town groups. Or town departments. That's what I would recommend. Sort of what I would lean to seems reasonable. But
yeah, I'm hopeful that again, we're depending on the Collins Center a lot, but I would think that their strategy for drilling down into town staff and committees and things would be helpful.
Yeah, I also think it's good that there would be like somewhat of a buffer there between us and the different staff and people we talk to, just in case folks are concerned about confidentiality or that sort of thing. Bernie?
Yeah, just to go back to the thing that Andy mentioned about scale. There are 8 of us, maybe 9 once again at some point in time, and we're it. So we have to figure out how we can best reach folks and in different groups of folks and do that in a time efficient manner. Because last time I looked, we all have lives and probably want to do something more than talk to people about the charter. So we have to take into account the degree of reach and how can we effectively do this, which is not to write off any group, but to find ways that would get us an input with a reasonable amount of time and effort.
Erica?
Yeah, I think Bernie, you had compiled that original list that you referred to in the previous meeting of a sort of first pass kind of list on town staff and so on. And with additions, right, if that list becomes what we feel is more or less complete, it may be something like we have to decide on what we would consider a quorum, what we would consider a sort of fair enough representation of that cohort for a final report, and aim for that. If there's 50 people on the list, it's unlikely we'll be able to get to all of them, given everything you just said, Bernie. I would agree. But that we agree that if we get 20 or some percentage that we all agree is a fair enough representation, then we can we can do the outreach and then go about it with some metric that we agree on is a good representation, even if we can't get all of them.
Yeah, and I think there are probably some department heads that are more involved with the council and the charter than others. Our finance officer comes to mind immediately, as does our DPW director, because the council is the keeper of the public way. So there are some people that are more impacted by the operation of the charter than others. But we may want to filter on that as well. But this is more grist for the mill, more food for thought. And thank you, Eric. I think you're right on target.
Yeah, I would also just say that I think it's important to sort of like, rather than have a list of 50 people and make it so expansive we can't do it, it's going to be important that we can maybe develop a list of, I don't know, 15 people, but it's a diversity of different people. If we hear from just all department heads or just all board and committee chairs, it's sort of an echo chamber of a certain perspective. So I think it would be good if we had, like, I don't know, 5 department heads, 5 board and committee chairs, and 5 town staff representatives, etc., to sort of balance it out and get a diversity of viewpoints across the range of civil servants that we have. Meg?
I wonder if it makes sense to interview 2 or 3 at once, carefully selected, so there's some back and forth and maybe developing ideas and listening to each other. I don't know. It would not just to make it would make it more efficient, but also might trigger deeper exchange than just answering questions that we ask.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think that's a good idea. Andy?
Yeah, I think this is sort of where we're getting into the, what's the strategy for outreach? Because there's Bernie made this initial list just to get us started with some general stuff from people who've been deeply involved with the government, and then, we'll have a variety of things that I think the outreach subcommittee has probably been talking about. What the sort of waves of information collection that would happen. Yeah. So, I think having a comprehensive strategy of, how do we use interviews? How do we use focus groups? How do we use surveys? How do we use forums? And there's probably, a variety of ways that we can reach people. And it might be that we reach them so they can fill out a survey. We can reach everybody to fill out a survey. They might not do it, but and then we can have interviews with a certain number of people based on our capacity. So I think that I assume that the outreach subcommittee has been thinking about that, and I assume that we'll hear some from the Collins Center as well about how to structure that.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this? No. Okay. So I will bring us to outreach subcommittee. Have you guys had your meeting recently? Would either Erica or Raphael or Meg mind to give an update on your meeting and any sort of proposals for community outreach, what you guys did with the survey, anything along those lines. Just give us an update from your meeting and folks can ask questions.
So we met on January 23rd, and we had a couple of agenda items, one of which we've touched on, which is our response and recommendations to the interview protocols that I brought up earlier, the sort of emphasis on standardization, the emphasis on what we saw as the kind of value of transcription. So we already talked about that. The other thing that we covered is Meg's piece of work, which is developing a list of potential venues and sort of key people and facilities and organizations in the area to do our initial wave of outreach to. So once we have our materials prepared, our survey prepared, this is for the public piece, not for the officials and town staff piece. Where would we send it? And Meg's been working on that list and is solicited from all of you additional names or ideas, and I think has a list for us to look at or review in the packet. So we can talk about that. And the third piece of work that we took on was to review the idea of the survey and the draft survey that was on the table, that was sort of delegated for the subcommittee to look at last time. And so we took a close look at it. We spent time looking at the individual questions that were in the survey, and tried a method of like responding to them as whether they should be, whether we should keep them, whether we should ask them in a different way, whether they should be something like something other than a yes or no question. Should they be open-ended? Should they be a Likert scale? That kind of thing. And also whether they should be revised in some way. I won't belabor and go through the whole set of questions again, except to give you the sort of overall assessment at the end of that process, is that what we felt like was that the survey needs some organization and some attention to the difference between general and broad questions and specific sort of questions that address categories in the actual charter and subtopics. That's the headline. And one of the things that we identified as a sort of recurring challenge in developing questions, when we gave ourselves the challenge, even in the conversation of like, how would you revise this if you were going to revise this question? When it hits a specific topic, when a question is drafted to hit a specific topic in the charter, it's very challenging to not make it a leading question in some way or another. It's very difficult to ask a question that is like, well, what do you think about whether the lights should be red or green? You know, it's difficult to ask it in such a way that is not leading and is not cherry picking it, whatever it is, out of this enormous bucket of issues that the charter addresses. Because by whatever thing you can't ask all of it, and by picking the thing, you've not picked 99 other things. And
Right.
so there's a sort of there's a kind of potentially confirmation bias, right? By setting up a question that says, do you feel like this is an important issue? Well, sure, I think it's an important issue. That doesn't mean I think it's an important issue over and above the 99 other issues. So where we landed is that this is a place where we might also need consultation.
Yeah.
That developing a survey is a serious skill, that the consultation with the Collins Center might spill over and kind of advise on this process as well. I also think I would, this is maybe more one of my conclusions from our discussion rather than representing the whole group, but I was thinking a lot about the cascade or the flow from general questions about how the form of government is functioning. How well is it functioning in your life type of questions? How well is it serving your needs as a citizen of the town? How well do the different constituencies of the government work with each other? How well do they answer each other's needs? How timely are they? How, whatever adjectives we want to put on that. This is sort of general functioning of government kind of question. And then there are the questions that go to specificity, that go to specific things named in the charter, described in the charter, that are almost like quantitative. There's really specifically outlined. And there's a flow required from that. And there's also the possibility that we might need to think about the idea of having two separate surveys. And they might be a part A and a part B, right? But they might be, anyone can answer those general functioning of government kind of questions. Anyone who lives in this town can step up and opine on such a thing. There are also the questions about specificity, which people may or may not feel inclined to, want to, have the expertise to, feel like they want to take the time to answer questions about. And I think we want to consider whether or not we want to make those exclusive of one another. In other words, if I have time to do my part A survey, but I can't get into part B, is part A still valuable to the Charter Review Committee and to the town and everything else? So those are just some of the questions that we wrestled with and the things that I've been thinking about in the subsequent week. But that's just a kind of a quick outline. And we should leave time for Meg to go over the materials that she prepared on that list.
Andy?
Yeah, I think that's the notion of the cascade and the two different types of survey questions is important. And it might be that we have the general function of government questions that anybody can answer. You know, how well is this working? What's the, you know, what are the pain points for you, or what do you see as needing improvement? And then in terms of just how things work, and then, you know, through various means, we come up with some potential proposals, and then we ask people what they think of those. So they're responding to something specific and tangible. I mean, and even that might be fairly technical, but I mean, at least thinking of those as two separate and, you know, exercises, I think is important.
I agree, and I would say that it makes sense to have the Collins Center look at and provide us some advice regarding public input survey and public outreach survey. I think that they could help in sort of the general government questions. I think were pretty good, and then you had some of these questions where I chose what we would ask a question on, what might not be asked a question on, and they might be able to more objectively choose how to ask those questions, what scales to use, etc., in a way that could be helpful. Meg?
I think it's important to not only ask questions that are literally about the charter, because people don't necessarily know what it is and it can be intimidating, but how it's being interpreted, or things, you know, what the practice. So it might be things like, do you feel that your district meetings, do you know about them? Are they useful? How might they be? I'm pulling that out of the blue, but things that are, you know, should people who put in their names to be on a committee be public information unless they decide they don't want their name revealed? That's a topic that has come up when people approach me to give. So I think it doesn't have to be literally about the charter. There's a lot we can change if we want to, or recommend changing in terms of practice.
I would also just say we want questions that are in the public sphere enough that they will develop interest in the survey. Like, we want people to be interested enough in the survey to say, oh, I cared about this, or I had a problem with that, and develop questions that are not so obtuse that they aren't getting to the heart of things the public has paid
Right.
attention to. Andy?
Yeah, that was one of the things that the Collins folks mentioned there, that they have the survey questions bank that they've tested questions and they've used them in the past to specifically get public input. So I think that could be a huge benefit.
You're muted, Julian.
Yep, Raphael?
No, I was just gonna comment again about the bank of questions that might exist. I think we ended our meeting with just, we need some support with just survey creation. And we also talked about some other materials. I don't know if the visual sort of the things we could provide in terms of a graphic. I don't know if I'm recalling correctly.
Yeah, we did. Thank you,
Branding.
Raphael. Yes, we did talk about the need for when we have our survey ready to distribute, promote, publicize, how to create some visual branding and visual kind of materials to accompany any promotion that we do, so something is recognizable. We did
Agree
talk
on
about
that.
reaching out for that support.
Ken?
I'm one of those weird people that love surveys. I love taking them because I know that they're helpful to whatever organization is asking my opinion. So I take a lot of them, and a lot of them come through work through UMass. I've never seen a survey as strictly just questions. If they're asking me my opinion on something, there's often like a little bit of an aid there, a little bit of a link or something to say, before you may want to look at the charter or visit our website, the charter review website, that we shouldn't overlook that idea of kind of holding their hand a little bit and saying, this is where the stuff is,
Yeah.
Along with a survey, and not just have it straight questions. Just an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Other thoughts on the survey? Public survey? Raphael?
For me, it would just be good to hear from the Collins Center in doing this
Mhm.
work. It's worked, what hasn't. Here's some resources for you all to use.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. Marcus?
Oh yeah, I actually took a course on how to create a survey once. I have a book somewhere. I was just trying to look for it. I have no clue. But yeah, I think going with the bank of it's somewhere over there, and I have no
By
clue.
the by the sunset.
The pond.
Yeah. And I think going with the Collins on tried and tested questions is a great way of doing it, because I mean, even the slightest nuance can get you in trouble on these things, and you've got to be supremely careful. So
Yeah. Is that a photo of
I would
Harvard?
also,
yeah,
I
it
work
is,
with
yeah,
survey.
a few years ago. Sorry.
I think for me, yeah, use surveys, develop them. But I think what matters most to me is these folks have done this work with this process. That's crucially important.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Meg, do you want to screen share your outreach
I don't-
proposal?
I'm not sure it's worth taking time of our committee. I'm sort of thinking we're going through the agenda, and some people thought we were meeting at 6, might be good to end at 8, but what I'd like to, I'll email. I wasn't expecting to do that. What would be helpful to know? So, sorry.
Go ahead.
I can share.
want-
it if you want.
Okay, but good. Thank you, Raphael. What we're trying to identify, this is the broader outreach to the public, is, as Erica said, entities, neighborhood lists, standard outreach mechanisms like the Indy and the Amherst Current and the Jones Library. And what we need is to get the more information about how exactly you get, who's the gatekeeper for these different things. And it's a heck of a lot of work if I just do that by myself. So I'm wondering if everyone who would be willing to take 5 places. And I would, so not just, you know, for example, Amherst Chamber of Commerce, I know it's Arthur Haskins, we don't need that one, but the Rotary or these different lists to find out exactly who's the gatekeeper so that we can, when we have something to send out, we can do it very quickly. That's my first question. And you can do, I mean, as it's being scanned through here, I'd be thrilled if somebody has things to add, but I can't, I was amazed. Look at all these apartments. And I forgot to put on Olympiaville. Oh, no, it's there, Olympia. This is amazing. And our subcommittee is discussing how much outreach to the apartments, given that there's a lot of variety. Some of them mostly students and some of them are not. So I'm curious. I don't think it's worth our time to go through this list one by one. But you see there with Amherst Ford, it's Catherine Appy, and there's her contact. So we would say, you know, we would send to say, could you send this to post this on your website or send it to your list? Erica?
Thank you, Meg. It's a lot of work, and I think that your approach may be to have people take on 3, 4, 5 of these and add to it is great. I think I wish we could have a collective document, but I realize that's an open meeting problem. But
Well,
in
you
any
can
case,
send it to me.
yeah, absolutely. I just wanted raise my hand because I wanted to add to what you raised about, we had a conversation in the subcommittee about the apartments, but specifically about students and including students in in our outreach efforts. And I just wanted to confirm that the conclusion that we came to is yes, that we are, you know, we are inclusive of the student population in our efforts and in how we're thinking about designing questions and designing our approach.
So you'll see that updated list that was just screened through, in which I'll send everybody, includes the Collegian, and I need to find out. So then we need to, that's an example. If you all took 5, that would still leave most of them for me to do, but how do you get, how do you contact the Collegian? I mean, I could do it, but each one will take 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes or 20 minutes. So we did decide that whether an apartment complex has mostly students or not, it'd be interesting for them we decided to not screen against students, use that as a negative thing.
I would also just say that some of the apartments are mostly students, but some of the apartments are mostly families and full-time residents. So I think that it's important to go after all of the apartments, but especially those with the families and full-time residents, because not only do they,
well,
those of you who, sorry, some of the more diverse communities within Amherst. So I think that going after those areas is important, and we shouldn't just assume that because they're apartment complexes, only students live there.
Right. That's what our committee was unanimous but it's more, you know, it's one thing to say, okay, we'll send it to, for example, Olympia Place. It's just an administrative thing, but who's the contact there? So if anybody here is willing to take, say, 5, let me know, and I'll pick out, or you could pick 5 out yourself and let me know, and I'll do the rest. I had a couple of other questions, but Andy, I'm not facilitating. I see 2 questions, and then I had a couple of things to ask you.
Yeah, Andy, go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great list and a great start, and I don't think it's necessarily we're under a time crunch to get it right, because I think these folks are likely to be recipients of a survey, right? I mean, or if we're,
who knows?
In some cases we may have focus groups or forums or something, but I think those will be down the line a ways. So we have time to get the contact information, but just to get the full scope of venues for outreach, I think is great to get it now, and I'd certainly be happy to help find the contact people as we go along. But I don't think we're under a time crunch to do that.
I'm happy to help too, Meg.
Great,
Bernie.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that trying to screen out students is impossible. If you look at the
Right.
census data, the town turns over every couple of years. So half of the housing is folks who are transient. So we're not gonna. It would be an absolute waste of time to screen out students. Plus, students do live here, and they do have
Mhm.
they do have a role to play. One thought that just crossed my mind looking at this list as a way to get the word out is that the town is allowed to include a page or flyer with the tax bills.
Yeah,
And
great, good idea.
If you want to make sure you're hitting the population that's has skin in the game, putting a simple notice in with the tax bill that says, this is what we're doing in the charter review. Here's where you go to do it. Here's where you're going to check things out, or have a QR code or something in there. Would be pretty effective.
Marcus?
Oh yeah, sorry. What was I going to say? Oh yes, yeah, I kind of agreeing with Bernie there. We really just need, students are people too. They use our roads, they use our services, they use everything that we do. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about one or the other. Let's just go for it. So
Sounds like we all agree.
Raphael?
Yeah, for folks to know, we agreed, like, we want students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what was in play as well was trying to get some other venues that folks here might know to add to the list.
Yeah.
So other spaces that we could have as points of contact.
Yeah, I agree. I would just say some smaller organizations that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm thinking of like community organizations, Mothers Out Front. Sunrise. I was a part of Sunrise for a number of years.
I think that's on, isn't Sunrise on there?
I don't think so.
Oh, maybe it was on okay, good.
I have the contacts for all those people who now lead it. I'm thinking the PCA, Progressive Coalition. I know they were
That's on the list.
on there, right? I'm thinking like
So in essence, Julian, we were trying to come up with a process where folks could review the list.
Yeah.
And add needed.
Yep, right.
Sure.
So-
one organization, another one that just come to mind. Meg, I know I sort of.
What?
I sent you a real brief response to your email, but Stavros.
Good idea.
Yeah.
How could I forget that?
So I think it's a better use of our time rather than go over right now is for everybody to commit to taking 10 minutes to look at the list. And I'll send it again with these additions on it and think, is this a good time for me to ask my to reinforce my three questions?
Go right
One
ahead.
is look at the list and add to it. If everybody could let me know of, say, 5 that you're willing to research in order to, so that we know who's the gatekeeper, like the Amherst College student newspaper. It's pretty straightforward. It just takes some time to do it. That would be wonderful. The third thing was, this is a little different kind of a question. I was asked by the league, a friend of mine in the League of Women Voters are doing their newsletter. Could she post something about the charter review? And my instinct was, I'm very eager to, sometimes I jump the gun a little. So I have a warning that says, don't jump the gun, Meg. She said, is there something I could put in the league newsletter? And immediately I thought, sure, the statement we all agreed on, but I didn't know if I could actually do that. So it'd be great to know if somebody says, do you have something that we can just send them that, since we've agreed on it, we wordsmithed it, rather than if they're eager, I don't know, but that's a question I have. If you could weigh in on that. I don't know if they'll ask me again, but
I think
it's,
that's
and she needed to have it by tomorrow. It was the day she asked me, could I get it to her by tomorrow, which I couldn't, without asking somebody. And I thought, this isn't worth everybody's time for me to email and say, can I send this blah, blah, blah. Anyway,
Technically, I am the news person. The chair is the like talks to the news or whatever. Technically, so if there's something that comes up like that, Meg, you can email me. And if it's
okay,
minor like that, I can handle it or give you approval.
great. Is that okay with everybody?
I mean, I think we've already approved that, and it's part of
Right.
our outreach. So I think anybody who wants to print it it's fair game, I think.
I
Yeah,
would agree.
I would agree with that.
Anybody disagree? Because I don't have to even call Julian. I could have just,
You could
okay,
just
great.
yeah.
Because
No,
we all worked on it. Okay, great.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. You know, if we can create this list with a contact for each of the apartment complexes and, 15 or 20 neighborhood email lists, man, that's gold.
I completely agree. I think one neighborhood I didn't see on there, Orchard Valley. That's a good place to add. I think they have I sent you all this info in an email, Meg, so you can look at it there.
I thought I saw it. Okay.
Yeah, but great. Ken?
I think I heard Meg say two different ways to divvy up the different organizations. One was that she may just divvy it up for us, or that we pick our own. I would strongly suggest that, Meg, you just divvy it up to us. You give
Okay.
us 5, and we don't, I mean, we shouldn't play favorites or any of that stuff. It's just a phone call or an email.
Oh.
So please just assign us.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
I agree. Yeah, I think that's most appropriate. That way people aren't sort of picking and choosing and competing.
Say, no, I want the Progressive Network. No, I want
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah,
Amherst
yeah,
Forward.
not worth
Well,
it.
I know those two I know who to.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, just assign randomly.
Thank
And
you.
then I looked here, outreach subcommittee update, and then survey. So on to future agenda planning. Does anybody have other questions about the outreach stuff? No?
I
Okay.
just,
Future agenda planning, other things for me to put on the agenda at our next meeting besides having the Collins Center come and attend.
I would suggest taking a look at the charge and the required reports
Okay.
and having laying out those required reports, maybe creating some rough timeframes or some rough topics for each of the
Sure.
reports. So we frame that up a little bit, and then at some point, I'm sure the council's going to want to know what we're up to, and we can
Right.
calendar saying, well, this is what we're planning on doing. And you notice that it's past April 1st. So please, extend us.
Great.
Yep.
Erica?
I have a question. I don't know if it's an agenda item or not. We had talked about this idea of having design support for visual branding on future materials, and that sort of thing takes time to develop. So I want to move on it sooner rather than later. And so my question is first for Athena, about whether the communications office can support us in that way, or if we should look outside.
I can check. Samantha Giffen, our communications manager, said she has time to attend a meeting, and if you'd like her to attend an outreach meeting, since you'll be focused on that, I can invite her. I don't know the date of your next meeting.
Okay,
February 13th.
that's the next date of the whole committee.
Yeah, I know the committee's schedule, but I don't have a schedule for the outreach subcommittee.
we meet every other week.
We're meeting alternate Thursdays so far.
No, our Thursdays are booked forever and ever.
No, they're not. I hope not.
At
Oh, man.
6 or 6:30.
6:30.
I think it's 6:30.
So we
Okay.
can have dinner.
I will ask Samantha if she can attend next Thursday and help with some of that support. And then for the full committee, the committee had asked for KP Law to come and do a presentation for them, or give the lay of the land a little bit. Obviously they couldn't make it tonight. And then next meeting, you're having the Collins Center, so I asked if they could come to the meeting after that, and I just heard back that they can. So for the 27th.
Yeah, we may want to keep in mind that KP Law represents the town. And so as we get into discussions with the Collins Center and the Collins Center suggesting changes and the like, we're also going to want to have KP Law look over their shoulder. Because if push comes to shove, it's KP Law who's going to have to defend us. And they're a very skillful law firm. It's really good people that they employ, and they're on retainer. So we should see if we can take advantage of them as well.
I would just say that I think KP Law represents the town, and KP Law represents the town, if that makes any sense. As in, it's good for us because anything we need to defend would be defended through KP Law. It also means that KP Law represents the interests of the town, not necessarily the interests of what our committee might want to do or not want to do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Okay.
Just
Meg?
gotta raise my, also, for the agenda next time, the outreach subcommittee might have a report. I don't know if we'll get to make a calendar, but we probably will.
You're muted.
Whoops, outreach subcommittee, survey, future agenda planning, topics not anticipated by the chair. Any topics, folks, other stuff to put on the agenda? No? All right, I'll make my last motion of the night to adjourn.
Wait, I
Yep,
have,
Meg?
my thing wasn't working. I have
Sorry.
something that wasn't on the agenda.
Oh, go ahead.
We don't have to discuss this, but I'm just sometime I'd be interested, I don't know how we want to share what we each would, our own, I think it's great that we haven't, it seems that everyone on this committee is really committed to listening and to what other people think. And I'm just wondering if at some point we should put on the table what we would recommend, or maybe not, but if not, that's okay with me. And we should let anybody who wants to be, there's some people who've lobbied to be advocated for to get on this committee because they have opinions about things. And maybe a better way to express what you think should change about town government is not to be on the committee, and instead to be creative and smart about how you raise your concerns and things you'd like to be different. It's something that I've mulled over. I actually don't have any big, huge things that I'm hoping happen. I have a few little things here and there, but I was just curious if we've ever put those things on the table of what, by the way, here's what I'm bringing to this. I appreciate very much that that's not how anybody is leading, which is wonderful. Really, I'm really impressed because I think the cleanliness of our process, if that's the right term, is extremely important. And I'm really pleased that we've all seemed to be committed to listening to other people. Over.
Andy?
Yeah, I think listening is what we do for most of the upfront, and then at some point we're going to have to apply judgment, and that's where maybe we bring some of our. I mean, maybe as part of the listening, we can maybe the tail end of the listening, we say, well, here's what I'd like to throw into the mix, but then we'll have to, as a committee, then decide, So I think there'll be time to do that. I just think it'll be backloaded rather than front loaded.
I agree. I think we need to have
Great.
the neutral face to the public when we do outreach to an extent. Raphael?
And I'm going to follow that and say, I hear you, Meg, but in terms of like the work that I see us doing, it's more about getting insights from all community members. We could fill out those things too, But I think if you lean into what we would want, it's tricky in
Mhm.
terms of like our analysis of what comes in. I think we set ourselves up if we do that.
I actually agree, as you know, I agree with you. I'm just curious. Sorry,
Yeah,
it
I
wasn't
get it.
called out of turn. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry,
And
Julian.
quick question before Athena, can I get the recording of this? I'm taking and who does it go to? It goes to you, Julian, the minutes?
The minutes go to me and Athena. So
Okay,
send them
both
to
of you.
Athena as well.
And early next week's fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Marcus?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just gonna add. Yeah, I think the last thing we want to do is start and add to our opinions into the mix, because that's just gonna bias the pool of whatever we approach. You know, if we are open, if we're as open as we want, as we need to be, then we need to take a neutral opinion of everything and be welcoming of all opinions, and then we can get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for us to add our opinions into the mix with
Yeah.
our judgment on recommendations and removing language from the charter, or adding language to the charter, or amending stuff in the charter. I just don't think that's right now, because we don't want to sort of create bias in our outreach, or sort of randomly have like confirmation bias, if you will.
Mhm.
Meg?
Yeah, I hope it was clear that I agree with that.
Mhm.
Okay.
And since we're gonna get a new member and others may be being lobbied about people who should be appointed, we should clarify that this is, if you want to have your opinion communicated, it might be better not to be on the committee, instead to put your energy into giving input. I don't know if other people have been encouraged to nominate people
Athena?
or to promote people.
One last quick comment from me. There was an issue raised earlier about an extension, so it doesn't have to be at your next agenda, but I just wanted to remind you to put a pin in that so that the committee can ask for that extension before it gets too late. And the council agendas tend to get really full,
Yeah.
in the spring with the budget and so forth.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll probably put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Great. Other questions, comments, topics not anticipated before we adjourn? Seeing none, I move to adjourn. Second.
Second,
Thank you,
Andy.
Myself, I'm an I. Andy,
Aye.
Raphael,
Aye.
Marcus,
Aye.
Erica,
Hi.
Ken,
Aye.
Meg,
Aye,
and Bernie.
Aye.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you,
you
Athena.
too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Right,
Yeah,
thank
bye.
you.
Thank you. Athena, thank you.
Yeah.